So today we're going to do a quick service job on the impeller on an 8-horse Honda. And this procedure is very similar to the 9.9 and also the 10-horse. It's all kind of built on the same motor. And the way these guys work, this doesn't have the extension on here. Some of the extra long shafts will actually have an extension. This one is just a long shaft. So the first thing is to take the prop off, which I already did. There's also a few bolts. There's these bolts, and there's another pair on the other side of the lower unit. There's also a bolt here that will need to come off. It's right here. And then before you even do that, what you need to do is put it in reverse. So if you're having trouble getting it into reverse, you may have to crank the engine over a little bit or rotate it clockwise, and you want it in reverse. The reason for that is the removal procedure requires us to loosen the linkage. Now this is on the back of the lower part of the motor. You'll see that there's a lock nut here. This is the shift shaft, and this is how you disconnect it. Is these are two nuts. So there's a long nut and a short nut, and that needs to be unscrewed in order to remove the lower unit. You put it in reverse, that's the procedure, and then there's a procedure that we'll go over when you go back to reassemble this. Okay, I did this off camera just because it's a little tough with this camera to do it in here, but so I removed it. This is the shaft, the shift shaft. So like I said, this top bolt or top nut just screws upward out of the way. This is the bottom one is the lock nut. So we got that done. The next thing we need to do is raise the trim up. So in this case, I have power trim. If it was manual, you'd of course need to lift that. Okay, and that allows us to get easy access to our screws here. This has been in salt, and hopefully this will pull right off. If it doesn't, you can get a rubber mallet after these bolts come off and try to tap it gently loose and see if you can get this thing to come out. But I'm hoping it comes right off. Okay, so I took the other side off. These are the two small ones. This long bolt is the one that comes up out of here, right above the prop. And then I'm gonna go ahead and pull these guys out. Now, if it's a large lower unit on a big motor, I usually leave one bolt in like this to kind of catch, just in case I'm trying to get this thing off. This is such a small little motor, lower unit, that I can hold the thing with one hand, so I'm not going to worry about that. But that's just a tip, because you don't want a situation where the whole thing pops off. All right. And this ought to be interesting trying to do this one-handed here. Hold on. Maybe I should leave one in there. So I'm trying to hold the camera with the other hand. This isn't really working very well. Okay, let's try it. Okay, so I got my handy dandy. Ah, see, it's coming loose. Look at that, see? Okay, excellent. So this baby's gonna come right off. And again, you just wanna be gentle, because like hitting right here on the fin, you gotta, I wouldn't put too much of a blow, but I'm just lightly tapping. And there it popped out. All that weight is being held right here on this guy. All right. Right, so that's that last screw. And then here we can pull this whole lower unit right off. Look at that. This is why we tilt it up, by the way, so that we can get this baby to come out. All right, and this is what I always worry about, but that's in pretty good shape. Make sure we put some grease when we put that back in. Everything else looks good. This thing's still doing good. It's just way overdue on replacing the impeller. So that's the only reason why we're doing this service. All right, I'm gonna switch over to the bench and we can work on that there. You want to secure it somehow. I've got this little wood vise, it works pretty good for this, so that you can get in here to work on it. So we basically want to take these bolts off. We can slide this up. Okay, I've already taken the 3 bolts off. By the way, I should have showed you this. You know, you want to crack the bolts kind of evenly when you first get it off. Just because this is a sandwiched pressured piece here, I am going to replace this housing just because it's good, you know, good practice with this plastic housing. I'm not going to replace any of the other seals because I don't have any leaks. Everything's in good shape on this particular lower unit. It's just good maintenance. It's we've got a lot of hours on this particular motor. So then we raise this housing. Whoop, there's the ring. Look at that. There's that impeller. And it's actually still in pretty good shape with the amount of hours on this, but we'll go ahead and replace it. Now, some things to keep in mind. Notice the direction of the little vanes in here. The other thing is, notice where the key is. The other thing I just want to mention, this new housing comes with a gasket that goes with the water pickup tube. Interestingly, this was still stuck up here. Actually, let me go over here and show it to you so you can see it. Here's the pickup tube. And so this was lined up in here. And so I had to pull that off because we got a new one with the kit. So make sure you pull this out. As it's a good idea to replace this so you get a good seal here. Because this is going to be under pressure. It's going to be pumping water up here. And if this seal is not good, you'll get water leaking out of here and you'll lose some of your water pressure going up to the engine. Okay, so this plate should come right up. I actually just pulled on it a little bit ago, so that's why it seems easy. But generally, when you bring this plate up, the gasket gets all tweaked. So I'll go through here and use a little wire brush and we'll clean all this stuff up. And I'll probably get in there with a razor knife and just gently make sure I get all this off, get all this mating surface cleaned up. Now the other thing to be careful of, this is the seal here going into the crank or into the gear case. So you just need to make sure you don't do anything to damage that. But that's what this seal is here, of course. And like I said, this particular gear case, I've already drained the oil. There's no water in it, so we're in good shape. We're just going to make sure we clean this up and put our new pump in. Grab a different camera, so hopefully this will work better. So what we want to do is clean this guy up. Okay, so I'm going to pull out some of our items here that we're going to use. We have this little key we're going to want. These are these little dowel pins. The old ones are still in good shape, so I'm not going to bother with that. This is the pump plate. And then we also have our gasket, which is that pump plate. They gave us the impeller and such here. So, okay, so we've got this. It's all cleaned up. We got this mating surface all clean. And then we have the gasket. Of course, when we put the gasket on, you'll want to make sure that these holes line up accordingly. That way you know you have it on the correct way. Plus it's also keyed. And so we can just put it on like so. Okay. And then on this guy here, you see you've got this plate. Again, it's keyed, so it's going to only go one way to our shaft, just like so. Now, it's here where you want to start putting some lubricant on here. So I use this Quicksilver marine grease, the 24C. You can use any marine grease, but this stuff works great. I don't know, is it sacrilegious to use a Mercury product on a Honda? But anyway, this stuff works really good. So you want to put a light coating on here. So I just go ahead and just get it on this whole thing. All right, and we're just talking about a light coating here. That's all we're talking about. And then same thing with where the key goes. So we're gonna put this new key. Get this baby all, just lightly coat the whole thing. And remember, our impeller is going to go on this shaft too. So just, we're trying to protect it. Here, there's a little bit of friction on this plate. Look at the old plate, see? You get friction on there, so it's good to go ahead and put a layer of this grease on there. All right, okay, so we've got this just like so. All right, now here's the new one. We've got this housing here, and I will put a light layer of grease all in here, including on this O-ring. And one of the things that can be helpful is to keep the old one nearby so you can see the direction of the impeller, and that just helps you out so that you know that you're going in the right direction when you get the impeller in there. So we get this baby all looped up, get a light layer on that O-ring. All right. And then we have our impeller. These have a keyway on it, so if you look at this up close, hopefully, but you'll see that one end is keyed. Oh, here, let me grab the old key. You'll see it better. You got one side that the key fits in, and it won't slide all the way through. It's kind of channeled here. It's blocked off. So just be aware of that this is for the top coming down. Okay. All right. If we look at the old one, you'll see that they were turning. This whole assembly should be turning clockwise, and that's why I said earlier, just be conscientious of that when you're working on your motor, or before you drop the lower unit. See what direction the flywheel is spinning, and so most of them are clockwise, but you just need to check, especially if you're doing a different model other than these Hondas. But just confirm that. So at any rate, it's clockwise. So that's the direction we're going to want this to spin. So looking at it like so, remember the shaft's coming down, it's turning this way. All right, so this is where you can kind of push it in. See what I'm doing, like so. Kind of turning it in that direction. There we go. All right, so you can look at it and go, oh yeah, it's kind of the same direction, right? Now what I also do is I like to line up that key, the keyway. So I'll spin it. See, which way did we have that? About in that position right there. All right, nice. That looks good. That looks good. And we can see it's lined up right here. And you know what? I may just go ahead and just put a little bit more on there because it is a friction point. All right. All right, cool. So now I'm going to take this bad boy, come down. I just need to make sure the pins lined up in those holes that we talked about earlier where the gasket, basically these holes here, there's these pins to line up. So we got that. Perfect. They gave us new bolts. It's already got thread sealer on there. Look at that. We don't have to do anything but tighten it to spec. So I'll go ahead and get this guy in there. Now you don't want to over tighten this housing because remember this is plastic, right? So they're saying 9 foot-pounds. Alexa, 9 foot-pounds to inch-pounds.
9 foot-pounds force is about 108 inch-pounds force.
Oh, there we go. So we're going to set it to 108 here. That's good. I'm going to go diagonal on this. Go. That one's already. Perfect. Okay. So we got that done. Now at this point, let's just lube things up a little bit. So remember, this is going to go into the water pipe. And so what I like to do is just, if you notice how this seals, it goes around this whole thing here. So I like to just put a little coat on there, and same thing here on the inside, because I want it to slide on really easy when I go to put all my stuff together. Okay, so we'll get that like that. Remember right here, we want to get our splines all lubricated up. Now there is a bushing that's here, so we also want to make sure we get plenty of lube on this. Now you can't go too crazy, all right, because what will happen is if you get too much grease in here, it'll actually create like this hydraulic pressure in here because you've got so much grease that it'll push up against your efforts to get the splines to mesh. So you know, you just want a nice, not a heavy coat, but you know, it's just a reasonably light coating on this. Okay. All right, and at this point we are ready to get this thing reinstalled. So for the bolts that hold the lower unit on, I like to put a little bit of thread sealer. I'm not putting like the thread locker, like a red, well, red's too much, but like a blue thread locker. This is just a thread sealer by Permatex, and I just like to put that on there because that helps not only lubricate a little bit and seal it so that we don't get salt water in there, but it also helps guard against corrosion. And so we'll get that all on here on each one of these. All right. Perfect. Since we've got this out of the vise, and before we install it, I want to go ahead and adjust it here because it's too hard to measure and monkey around with once you try to get it installed. And that's for this shift shaft. What we need to do, the shop manual says to have a clearance of 8 millimeters from the top, this threaded shaft, to the top of the nut, which is equivalent to about 5/16 of an inch. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust that while we're here. Okay, perfect. And then what I'm also going to do, let's lube this up. Just put a nice coat. of our grease on there. All right, now we're ready to install this. All right, and we want to make sure, you can't see what I'm doing here. We want to make sure that we've got this, the water inlet pipe lined up with our rubber little connector that comes out of the outlet of the water pump. So hopefully you can see that okay. We're talking about this has to mate in with this inlet. So there we go. We just kind of wiggle it a little bit. There we go. And we push. Look at that. It's all mated. So now we can take our bolts, the ones that I put a little bit of thread sealer on there. We're going to go ahead and get those babies into position here. These bolts are supposed to also be tightened around 9 foot-pounds. So around 108 inch-pounds also. This is going to be hard for me to get my torque wrench in here. So I'm going to just go by feel on this. I've done this enough times on these that I feel comfortable doing that. And so these you also want to go, you know, evenly as much as you can. So now we're ready for putting this prop back on. Now, one thing I should have said on the shift linkage, should have said this earlier. You want to make sure that it's still in reverse, and you can tell because this thing's going to be locked, and you're not going to be able to spin this freely, the prop shaft. So I already checked that earlier off camera, so that's something you want to check before you go to install this. So, and then now we're going to go over here and deal with this. Now I don't know if I can get a camera view. There we go. So I'm going to take this. We already set the gap, see? That's why I did that beforehand, because it's pretty hard to get in there and measure this and monkey around with it. So let's go ahead and... All right, so they're there. Now you just need to tighten them together with 2 open-end wrenches so it locks it into place. All right, that's all there is to it. Use a 10mm. Just go nice and tight like that. Yeah, there we go. Down here we're going to want to put some grease on these splines. So go ahead and do that. Okay. Yeah, and you know, I should mention while you're in here, just make sure you don't have fishing line or any of that garbage in here, because that will destroy these seals. Now they have a little slot here. That's about right. You don't want them super tight. They need to be snug. And so I basically go hand tight, and then I do maybe about a half a turn. And then there's a lock here for a cotter key. And I'm going to go grab another one because the one I had in there has been used. You really should replace those. So here's the old cotter key. It's kind of mangled up, so I'm going to put a new one in. Of course, it's getting a little on the long side here, but that'll be fine. And we take this and we bend it like so. Be golden. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is pop this out of gear. See, it's in reverse. Now we're in neutral. Put it in gear. It's locking. Look at that. It's working. So the best thing to do now is to dunk this in the water. Test. Make sure that you got water coming out of your little pee hole there. And yeah, that's it. And now we're going to be good for several hundred hours on this kicker motor. So hopefully that was helpful. if you have to swap out your water pump on a Honda 8, 9.9, or a 10 horse, again, they're all built on the same basic drives, and that's pretty much how you do it. So hopefully that was helpful, and we'll see you out on the water.